Hello there, welcome to Venture Capital. I'm Katie Pilbeam. Protests in Greece. We check in with RT's Lucy Kafanov. She's in Athens to tell us about the real feeling on the streets there. Plus, I spoke to the head of Saxo Bank and I asked him what the underlying problems of the Eurozone are and what needs to change to sort the problems out. As well as that, we've got corporate news. We've got RT's Sean Thomas, our in-house investor, poised at the business desk to give us a peek at his portfolio. But first, this week, the Federal Reserve defied expectations and decided to keep the US economy on life support. The Fed will continue to pump cheap money into the system or injecting the sick patient with steroids. Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke voiced his concern that the US economy is still not healthy enough to survive without its monthly medicine. He's referring to the $85 billion monthly stimulus program, which equates to $1 trillion a year. That's a huge prescription, half of which is spent on supporting mortgages and the other $500 billion is spent on government bonds. He also warned that the looming debt ceiling showdown may have very serious consequences unless a deal is reached soon. But it seems like the more the debt ceiling is moved, the faster we approach it again. And ceilings, unless on some kind of freaky theme park ride, are not supposed to move. So I'm now joined by Naeem Aslam from Ava Trade, who predicted correctly that Mr. Bernanke would continue his boosting methods. So, Naeem, tell me, is the Federal Reserve doing the right thing by keeping the patient on the medicine, on the life support? Tell me.
We got to take this kid out of a rehab and we got to look at the history, because in 2010, when they ended their QE, what happened was there was a market sell-off. Similar thing happened in spring 2011. In 2012, the twist operation happened exactly in the similar situation. They are doing $85 billion a month. What is the emergency of doing this? There is no reason for doing this. In 2000, there was a quantitative easing going on at this scale. I certainly do not remember this kind of a massive quantitative easing going on, or if there is any sort of a need for this going on. Because for traders, like I said before, you got to love this market, you're just going to keep doing it. And the market and the real economy is a two different things completely, because market is at its peak, but whether the economy is at there, no, not at all, because we have a growth which is literally very, very fragile. And then the Fed, they wanted to keep the kid on steroid and they wanted to keep pumping it.
Thank you. Naeem Aslam, Ava Trade, thank you for your time today, very much appreciated. Greece endured a 5-day strike this week by public sector workers protesting against tough spending cuts and job layoffs. And to make matters worse, the country's Prime Minister said that the country will need another 6 years to return to pre-crisis levels. Greece has already received 2 EU IMF aid packages worth €240 billion since 2010 and is expected to receive a third rescue package of €10 billion. So we've got RT's Lucy Kafanov. She's in Athens this week for us to tell us all about it. Now, Lucy, good to see you just there. Can you tell me, what do the protesters actually want?
Hi there, Katie. Well, the protesters say that they want to preserve both their lives and their livelihoods. 6 years of consecutive recession here in Greece has certainly taken its toll. The latest round of strikes has been in response to new austerity measures imposed by the government in order to rein in spending. It will affect up to 25,000 jobs here in Greece, with thousands potentially laid off or redeployed. What this means is that a lot of these civil sector workers might either be forcibly moved to other positions against their will, or will have to work on reduced salaries. Now, this is something that they say is completely intolerable for them, not just because it's a painful economic measure, but because the cost of living here has gone up. They've already been dealing with up to 40% reduced pensions and salaries, and they say that these new cuts are just too much for them to handle. And it's not just civil sector workers. Teachers remain actually off the job. We've seen doctors walk off the job as well. And of course, it really is something that they say they're tired of. They feel like they're paying for mistakes made by the government and by big banks, and they don't want to be the ones who are paying that price.
So, Lucy, is their anger aimed at the government then and the banks? Who are they directing it at exactly?
as well as the Eurozone too. I mean, we've heard different varieties of opinions on the ground. Some people feel that it's the government mismanagement that's due to blame for their problems. They think that austerity measures isn't necessarily the only thing that the government could be doing. But at the same time, when you actually talk to people about what other options the government has, no one can really come up with a solution. All they know is that they're tired of being the ones who are basically seeing their quality of life go down, seeing their salaries go down. We have to keep in mind also that this is a country that has record unemployment nearing 30%. 2 out of 3 young people are out of work. People who do have jobs, like some of these civil sector workers, have found their pensions have gone down, their salaries are being cut. And while they're not exactly sure who specifically is to blame for this, they know that they are tired of it. But one thing actually that we noticed that was a little bit surprising is that the turnout wasn't as strong as it was in the years before. And what that signified, according to some of the people that we spoke to, is that a lot of Greeks, while frustrated with the situation, are really becoming resigned to it. There simply isn't that level of hope and optimism, that feeling that perhaps taking to the streets will somehow be heard. Because again, as you mentioned, 2 bailouts already, possibly another one in the works. They simply don't feel like either the government or the Eurozone or the European lenders are hearing their voices.
Lucy Kafanoff there in Athens, giving us a real insight into the resentment being felt by the people on the streets in Greece. Now, earlier I caught up with the head of Saxo Bank, Lars Christensen, and I asked him what the underlying problems of the Eurozone are and what needs to be changed to solve them once and for all.
The euro is a major drag on growth. It destroys economies. It has destroyed several economies already, or very close to, and it'll continue to do so. So the real issue they have to deal with is how do we slowly but surely change the euro from where it is now into something that either works or gets dismantled to some extent, right? To make it work, you have to make a full-scale economic foundation underneath it. In my view, that's not going to happen. I don't think it should happen. I think Europe is better off with competing economies, and irrespective of what I don't think the populations of Europe are ready to accept that full integration. So that leaves really only the other option, which is dismantle the euro. That doesn't necessarily mean explode it into 17 old currencies, but it does mean that you cannot have Greece and Portugal and Germany in the same currency union. It simply will not work. Whether that means 2 euros or 3 euros or 10 euros or Germany leaving the euro and leaving the rest to battle it out in a little bit more benign environment, I don't know. But something has to happen, because it cannot continue in its current format, and you will never see growth in Europe again until we dealt with that problem.
Now, one of the answers to this problem is seen to be Europe having a banking union, and there are steps being made to put that into progress. Is this the answer, though, in your view?
In my view, 10 countries in Europe are not in the EU, in the Eurozone right now. Many of these countries have specifically said no thank you to being in the Eurozone. And introducing the bank union is in effect introducing all the bad things from the Eurozone through the back door. So it's not only very unsmart, but it's also very undemocratic, because it's in essence what people have said no to already. Now, the banking union's next iteration, it's not in the first, will be that there's a solidaric liability between Europe's banks for the weak banks, which means in essence you're going to weaken the strong banks to support the weak banks, and this is just not the way to go. So for me, the banking union, and I hope it doesn't come to pass, but if it does, it's another nail in the coffin for the Eurozone, and unfortunately beginning to then also involve countries that were wise enough to stay out of the Eurozone.
OK, corporate news time. We're going to get stuck in with something sparkly, girl's best friend and all that. Russia's diamond miner Arosa and the world's top producer by output in carrots is reportedly planning a share sale this October. The government plans to sell 14% of the company's shares in Moscow in the privatisation deal, which has been in the works since the mid-2000s. The company sees its valuation between $9 and $15 billion. The biggest Russian instant payment chain, Kiwi, whose shares are already trading on the Nasdaq, is to hold a secondary public share offering. Stakes worth over $270 million will be sold by its founders and board members, as well as by Mail.ru Group. The Russian railways company RZD has reportedly applied to buy stakes in the Greek national railway company Trans OSE. The move plans as a part of Russia's initiative to support friendly Greece at this complicated economic stage, according to the Russian government speaker, that is. OK, we know that the Federal Reserve made their decision this week. We were talking about it earlier, and that meant that the global markets surged. So let's go over to Mr. Sean Thomas, our in-house investor, and see what he was up to and if you actually managed to benefit from the rally then, Sean. So what have you been up to?
Well, actually, Katie, I did benefit.
Yeah.
You know, my friends down at the Federal Reserve, I must thank them for not tapering that stimulus. But basically what that meant for us here is that, you know, energies were up across the board. And if you remember, I stayed with energies. In fact, my notes, I've got a big happy face on my notes. Because Gazprom up 3%, Rosneft and Lukoil both up 1%, which means I gained this week. Also, if you remember, I stayed with agriculture and Rusagro. They didn't lose money. They didn't gain money, traded flat. So it didn't really benefit me much, but I didn't lose anything. So overall, I'm up $185 this week for a grand total of $9,463, down almost $500 from my original $10,000, but still I gained this week, so I am a happy, happy man.
Yeah, you should be. First-time investor, that's not bad. All right, then, come on. This winning streak, what's going to happen next week? Are you going to keep it going?
Well, of
Energy?
course. Yeah, of course, you know, like with energies and oil, why change a good thing? So I'm going to say, as they say in the gambling business, I'm just going to let it ride.
Woo!
However,
Cruise out.
Exactly. I'm going to get out of agriculture, though, because it didn't do me any good. And ready for this? I'm going to get into the potash wars. I'm going to enlist. I'm going to do my part to see what I can to gain some money off of this craziness that's happening. And here's why. Eurocali is surging. They're up nearly 6%, 5.8%. So I'm going to try and get in and see if I can make some money off of this chaos.
Right, make sure you wear some armour and you protect yourself then in this war. Mr. Sean Thomas, thank you very much indeed. Going into battle on the Russian stock market. See you later. Good luck.
Thanks.
And that's all for today's Venture Capital. Next week, though, I'll be in Sochi. We're taking the show on the road for the International Economic Forum, so join me then if you can.